Hello and welcome to the second daily for the second test match at the Gabba between England and Australia. And where to begin, really? It's all gone wrong very quickly for England. England find themselves in a really precarious situation, which again could have been avoided had they done some of the simple things well and consistently. England will have to make sure that they are completely on point tomorrow, because if they don't, it could spell heartache and trauma again for England fans. So at the end of the day's play, Australia have a lead of 44 runs. I guess going back to the start of the day, Jofra Archer and Joe Root didn't really put on much more beyond what we saw last night. All that for 334 in the end. Joe Root carrying the bat on 138 not out. And he's had his best day out in Australia as far as a batter goes. So congratulations to Joe Root. I think, as I mentioned yesterday, he's the kind of batter that once he breaks through that barrier, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him score a lot more runs, a lot more hundreds in the next few tests. But as a team, he's going to need a lot more support than what we've seen so far in the 3-4 days of Test cricket on this tour. And in response to England's score, Australia finished the day on 378 for six. Three players getting over 50, over 60, in fact. Jake Weatherald probably looked the best of the batters, getting 72. Marnus Labuschagne, again, continuing where he left off at Perth, getting quite a quick 65 for his standards. And then Steve Smith, again, getting into the 60s, looking every bit as, the great Steve Smith that we remember from a decade or so ago. And there were some supporting knocks as well from Cameron Green, Travis Head, and the danger man for England at the moment is Alex Carey, who in these situations over the last year or so has proven to be really kind of a thorn in many bowling attacks sides. As I say, over the last sort of year, 18 months, and he's in a position where he can score some quick runs tomorrow. I guess the worrying thing for England, outside of Alex Carey still being at the crease, is that there's Michael Niso, who's joined Carey at the moment, who's, he's good for a 30, 40, even 50 if he gets in. So I guess the situation of the game is such that you would say Australia are ahead. Obviously, the 44-run lead is a lot in these conditions in a day-night test, and especially from what we saw of the pitch today, where there was a little bit of up and down bounce. We saw a number of batters getting hit sort of on the elbow. Cameron Green got one on the thumb. So it does look like the pitch is maybe beginning to play a few tricks. With England's first innings wrapping up very quickly this morning, I think they had to come out and fire some shots early and make sure that they didn't let off any pressure early, especially given Travis Head was opening, and given how that went at Perth, and the strategic choices that Stokes and the bowlers made there, where they bowled a lot of short and wide stuff, which Travis Head capitalized on. England had to come out and make sure that they didn't make that same mistake again, and unfortunately they've done that again, and it begs the question as to why. You look at how Australia went about their business and how they brought about the wicket-taking opportunities. It was pitching the ball up. It was in that channel, inviting drives, encouraging strokes on the up, and getting wickets caught in the cordon, or in the rare instance maybe a clean bowled in the case of Jamie Smith. But for some reason, England keep going to this ploy of bowling short. At the start, it seemed as though maybe it wasn't even a conscious strategic choice to do that. It just seemed as though the bowlers were just not just that the radars were completely off. Bryden Coss, especially Jofra Archer and Gus Atkinson, had moments where they bowled well in partnership, but didn't really get the breakthroughs. And at the other end, when they had to rotate and bring on one of the other bowlers, it was just help yourself stuff, really. I think that's what helped Jake Weatherald really get away. We saw a glimpse of it at Perth. He looked like he could play the short ball very well, and keep the scoreboard moving. But today we saw the best of him, and he was aided by a lot of erratic stuff, which I guess as a someone making their his debut was at Perth, but someone starting out, this was the perfect situation to get underway in terms of scoring runs and getting a 50 and get up and running. And he took full advantage of some poor bowling from England. And again, that tempo that Australia has been, sort of wrestling with at the top of the order, when Usman Khawaja was there, and Marnus Labuschagne was sort of going into his shell as well. I think Weatherald, if he can replicate this more often, I think this solves a huge headache and a huge kind of question mark that was over the Australian top order's head. And funnily enough, it was Travis Head today that started off much slower, and let Jake Weatherald take the lead before Head himself started to get in on the act. But the bowling from England, far too often we see them go to this short ball ploy, very early on in the inning. The way England bowled today, it's just again, it's characteristic of this side, and the fact that they can't almost string together two days of good cricket. And I don't think that's being too harsh. For every good day that they have, and we all England fans and pundits kind of feel like, okay, maybe they've learnt their lesson, even just a little bit. They don't back it up with something like today, and it's these kind of days which just it undoes all the good work, or whatever good work they may have put in prior. And in a series where they have to win 3 full test matches, days like this, bowling performances like this, is just not going to cut it. They are going to find themselves on the wrong side of the result if they keep in each test match having a day like this, because at the pace that these test matches are going, the way England play, if they keep ending up having these kind of days, then they're not going to find themselves on the right side of the result at the end. To compound matters, the fielding was equally woeful. 5 dropped catches, at least 4 of them were simple by international standards. Jamie Smith had quite a horror day today, really, along with Ben Duckett as well. To be honest, both of them didn't score any runs with the bat, and they both put down. Well, Ben Duckett put down two chances, and Jamie Smith dropped one very simple chance, and then left one that he, probably should have gone for, which put Joe Root in an awkward, compromised position to try and go for one, and he didn't make the catch either. So, all in all, it was a really poor fielding performance. And when you're bowling as badly and as erratically as England were, at the very least, if a chance comes to you, you have to take that chance, especially against Australia. If you're relying on 15 wicket-taking opportunities to get 10 wickets, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. So, England really have had a forgettable day, and it has repercussions on sort of their batting when it comes time to it, because again, a lot depends on how they go tomorrow morning. If they can get some quick wickets and wrap up this Australian innings within the first session, maybe even the first session and a bit, the lead probably won't be as high as maybe 100, or even 150. Again, I go back to that 150 kind of margin, which I feel like, again, England left at least that many runs out in the middle. But if England aren't able to wrap up Australia's innings quick enough tomorrow, they might find themselves, England that is, they might find themselves in a position where they have to bat the third innings with the pitch becoming slightly more temperamental, with some uneven bounce up and down. But most importantly, they might have to face the pink ball under lights, which we haven't seen yet in this test match. And starting off in those conditions in that twilight period against Mitchell Stark again, when you're behind in the game and you have to erase a deficit, that's not going to be easy at all. So England have really gotten themselves in this extremely compromised position, and they're going to have an unbelievable first hour tomorrow morning, because if not, I see this going very quickly in favor of Australia, and it kind of taking the same, or following the same blueprint as day 2 at Perth. One area where England will be sort of holding on to hope and clutching at what little hope there might be is that, given this pitch has been starting to misbehave a little bit with the uneven bounce and some balls bouncing and shooting off a length, is the fact that even though Australia have a lead and may extend the lead to 100, 120 if they have a good morning session tomorrow, it's the fact that Australia will be batting last on this wicket, if England can bat well in their third innings. If England are to take advantage of that potential scenario, they have to take the last 4 wickets of Australia very quickly tomorrow, and be batting as early as possible in that first session. England they can't keep relying on this extreme way of playing and hope that someone will play this blinder in the 4th innings against the odds, on a pitch that is cracking and breaking up, under lights, etc. Bazball characterizes itself by playing that way, but the consistency that you need to do well in Australia day in, day out is far more important. And days like today just hammer home that fact that England cannot afford to play this extreme way. They have to just do the simple things well, and come tomorrow, hopefully they would have learned from their mistakes today. The bowling strategy still kind of blows my mind, how in a test match on a pitch like the Gabba, with the pink ball, that you don't just stick to line and length. You don't do what has always worked in Test cricket and what you saw worked for the opposition earlier on in the game. The fact that it seems like Bazball has to be seen to be doing things very differently all the time, almost in sort of a look at me, look at us. We can do things in a different way and still have success. And yeah, in certain conditions that might work, but in Australia, I think we see it year in, year out, during the Australian summers, is that the teams that do well, the bowlers that do well, are the ones that just hammer on a line of length, remain consistent, and often let the pitch do most of the talking. And when you're bowling halfway down the wicket, both sides of the wicket, that's just not going to happen. It's going to take a complete brain fade from the batters collectively, for erratic bowling strategies to pay off. And Australia just don't play that way. Yes, there might be the odd batter that tries to take things on, with Travis Head, the likes of Travis Head, but as a collective, they don't really play that way. So England really need to just go back to basics and try and just remember what works in Test cricket. And I know that might be a tall order for this team, because they just don't seem to play that way. They just like to try things that are extreme, and it would be interesting to know why they went so short so soon. I know there's this perception that Travis Head doesn't play the short ball well, but every time I've seen Travis Head play, in games where bowlers have tried to target him with the short ball, he seems to score runs. And when he gets off to a good start, usually his partner gets off to a good start, and then that whole kind of momentum snowballs, and the other batters kind of benefit from that. So it's a really strange bowling strategy from England. Another interesting point, which I touched on yesterday, was that obviously Nathan Lyon was excluded from the side, and seeing how flat that pitch looked yesterday when England were batting, I got the feeling that there were stretches there where spin could have provided a nice change of pace, a different kind of problem for England to deal with. We never saw that in the end. Had there been spin, could England have been bowled out sooner? Perhaps But again, these are hypotheticals. But if there was any kind of chance that we would see what role spin could play in this game, it was in the overs that Will Jacks would have bowled, but he ended up bowling just one over. So we haven't seen what effect spin could have. Again, with Australia's batters batting so well in partnership, and when they were settled, scoring at, as I say, 5 or 6 runs and over, could a change of pace, a frontline spinner, could that have made a difference? Maybe. I think both teams might look back on this test at the end and feel like maybe they could have picked a spinner, because in England's case, Will Jacks batting so low and not really offering overs, at least in this first innings, it to me it seems like a bit of a strange decision. It feels like his selection was more a sort of trying to cover our bases and maybe strengthen the batting lineup a little bit for some bonus runs at the end if we can, as opposed to being a real aggressive option, one way or the other, whether it's the bat or the ball. So I find that decision strange. But again, until we see the third and fourth innings and how the pitch behaves, I can't really say definitively if it was a good decision or not. But in the case of Nathan Lyon, I think when you have a spinner as good as he is, I think he's always a threat. And for England, they have Will Jacks who can bowl spin. Could they bowl him tomorrow and try and tempt Alex Carey and Michael Nisa to maybe go for one shot too many? I think there is room for that. I get the feeling that maybe England are a little bit set in their ways in terms of, we spent 3-4 years trying to get this pace bowling attack together, and so we are going to rely on these pace bowlers as much as possible, and maybe that has meant that they've devalued the spinner a little bit. Again, I don't know. That's just speculation on my part. But I feel like there's a chance that England might be falling into that trap a little bit, especially seeing, how carried away they got with the short ball ploy. So going into day 3, Australia are in a very strong position. Again, England have squandered what looked like a good start at the end of day 1. It's almost a question of which England will turn up tomorrow. Is it going to be the version of Bazball we saw on day 1 at Perth, where they did some of the simple things well for long enough? They took their catches, they bowled in areas that you would expect bowlers to bowl in Australia, or is it going to be what we saw today, where it's just shotgun, erratic, no one really knows where the ball's going? For Australia, it's pretty simple. It's just trying to bat as much as possible in the first 2 sessions, get as much of a lead as possible, given the fact that the pitch is breaking up a little bit, but also with a view of getting England back at the crease batting when that twilight period hits under lights, which, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't seen that yet in this test. And at that point, it's completely in England's hands. They're going to have to bat out of their skins to remain competitive in this test, but also to try and set a lead of any kind of note for Australia to chase down in that 4th innings. But England need to make sure they get to that stage without losing themselves along the way too soon, because there's still a lot of cricket to be played. It's only the end of day 2, and I hope England realize that they have 3 more days of cricket to play. I know Bazball doesn't really look at that kind of stuff, but I think they really have to, because so far in the 4 days of cricket we've seen on this tour, I think it's pretty clear that what's worked for England at home over the last 4 years is just not what is needed on Australian pitches against the Australian team, in their home comfort. So that's all from me for day 2. I'll be joining you again tomorrow after day 3, where I think we'll probably have a much better idea as to who's really in front in this test, and who's really in the driver's seat. I still maintain that England were 100 to 150 runs short in that first innings, particularly when the pitch wasn't really breaking up as much. Again, that margin is probably going to be costly come the end of the test match. But, the way England plays, who knows what we'll get tomorrow. But I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you are too. Catch you tomorrow.